Well, speaking of a shorter album, we've got New Pornographers with Mass Romantic from November 21st, 2000. Matt, what are the stats on this one?
Mass Romantic by the New Pornographers comes in at number 456 in the 2000s on Best Ever Albums, number 52 in 2000, number 2,751 of all time. It is the New Pornographers' second highest rated album on Best Ever Albums behind 2005's Twin Cinema. Mass Romantic did not make Rolling Stone's list, and the New Pornographers are ranked number 582 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
All right. They are a Canadian indie rock band. They formed in Vancouver, British Columbia in 1997. I think this is the first time we've talked about a band from Vancouver or group.
God, I don't know. Give me 23 days and I'll go back and listen and see if you're right.
It's not a city that's come up a lot, I feel like. They're considered a musical collective or super group, although Carl Newman, who's a member of the New Pornographers, does not like the term supergroup because when they formed, they weren't really like all that famous separately. There are some different members in the current iteration of the band, but this debut album has Dan Behar on vocals and multiple instruments, Nico Case on vocals, John Collins on bass. He's also the producer on this album, or co-producer. Kurt Dahl on drums, Carl Newman on vocals and synth, and Blaine Thurier on keyboards. And of those members, Nico Case, John Collins, and Carl Newman are still members of the current band iteration. Dan Behar at this time was a frontman for the band called Destroyer, and Nico Case was a solo artist. We will be covering her as well. Her solo work down the road this decade also. This is their debut album, and it is their 10th album. Comes out March 27th of this year, titled The Former Sight Of. And genres of this include indie rock, power pop, and a new subgenre, post-punk revival. So we've come full circle.
The hell is that?
I don't know. We've come back around to post-punk.
Wow.
Post-punk revival. Wow. Okay.
Take that for what you will. I don't know if the label holds or not, but I saw that on Wikipedia. Influences: Big Star, Cheap Trick, Beatles, Beach Boys, Belle and Sebastian, The Kinks, Shoes, which is a band I haven't thought about in a while, Elvis Costello as well. Similar artists: Peter, Bjorn and John, Sloan, Wolf Parade, St. Vincent, War on Drugs, or The Hold Steady. No charting on the Billboard, but each of their first 4 albums placed in the Village Voice's Paz and Jop year-end list of the best albums of the year. Some facts about this. The name of the band was chosen by Carl Newman, who liked the Japanese film The Pornographers. And yes, Matt, I have seen that film. I saw it in college. And it was also an homage to a British band called The New Seekers and a track on Dan Behar's first Destroyer album called The Pornographers. All of the original members of the band were in the Vancouver music scene at the time the band was formed. They were either all in like other bands or like solo artists or things like that, and then they all came together. Mass Romantic was recorded over 3 years. The first 4 songs were done in 98, and Carl Newman says production on the album was difficult, basically due to all the like kind of overworking the songs and kind of like all of the instruments on the songs, as you can probably hear on some of the tracks, like making it like not overly complicated, but kind of being perfectionist, I guess, on it. The songs were written by Carl Newman and Dan Behar. In a Rolling Stone interview, Newman said that Son of My Father by Giorgio Moroder and Sparks, the band that we've talked about, were influences on this album. And the group vocals at the end of Breaking the Law, which is the last track, are credited to the Camp North Star Kids chorus, which is a reference to the Canadian film Meatballs, which has I'm just Bill Murray. I just blanked on his name.
It's in there somewhere, Josh.
Yeah.
You got it.
And yeah, so that's what I got. That's everything for the bio. We're covering them multiple more times. So I will give more bio, about the individual albums when we get there. So as opposed to their whole career. So, well, New Pornographers is one of my favorite bands. So I think you guys are somewhat familiar with them, but let's start with John. What did you think of this album?
Yeah, I am familiar with this album. I would say most of the New Pornographers run of the 2000s I am familiar with going into this, as well as the album they released a couple years ago. I remember listening to right after the pandemic, I think, around that time, or toward the tail end of it. I have always had an interesting relationship with the New Pornographers. I know that both of you guys are big fans of them. I know Josh very much so, as he just said right there, and Matt quite a bit too. I like the New Pornographers. I was reminded on this album, though, that I think how I best process the New Pornographers is sort of like in a greatest hits way of doing things. I think that the longer the album goes on, the more the songs kind of blend together for me a little bit, because I feel to some degree on this album it was all variations of the same theme. There's a chaos and a madcap nature to their sound a little bit, and there's all of these different sounds kind of assaulting you, right, as it's going on, but in a pleasant way. And when you hear, I think the two best songs on this album for me are Mass Romantic and Letter from an Occupant, right? And like when you hear those two, right, you love the hooks. They're these big, bright hooks, but they're not traditional because there's all of these different instruments coming together, and you're like, wow, what a novel way to build that. It's like a traditionally structured pop song, but then there's like a chaos to it, and there's these instruments, and wow, really, it's great. But then, like, when you've heard that same version of it 10 to 11 times, I think it's sort of wears on me is not the right word, but it's sort of wears me down a little bit, and my enjoyment of it starts to go down a little bit more. And that was sort of my takeaway, that when I listened to this, I did an experiment afterwards where I listened to this album in segments, right? Like like 3 or 4 songs at a time, and then took a break, and then there's 3 or 4 more. And I really enjoyed the album a lot more doing it that way. And there's a lot of like individual New Pornographer songs that I like, but I do think that the singles, like the singles and them, greatest hits. And I remember, Matt, you saying that about an artist before, that you sort of process them more as like a greatest hits artist than necessarily an album. Like you hadn't really listened to their albums, and I'd have to go listen to 23 hours of our 23 days, right? Of
I'm
our
sure I felt that
shows.
way about multiple artists, but yes.
Yeah. I think you might have said that initially. Now I know you changed your mind on it, but about The Cure or something like that, where it came.
Yes.
Probably. I think over time that changed for you a little bit, because I know that, as we dug into that a little, and that could be the case for me with the New Pornographers, but that was my lasting takeaway, that I like this album, but like 11, 12 tracks of it kind of wore on me a little bit. I also much prefer the New Pornographers when the female singers are the front singers of the group.
Yeah.
I almost all of my favorite New Pornographer songs are the female fronted songs. I actually think they're almost like two different bands for me. It's not that the songs with the guys in front are bad songs, but they're the songs that I think are the ones that I tend to pay less attention to. Whereas I think both of, Neko Case is obviously singing on this, but also I remember when we saw them live, because this is
I think one of the first. Was a fill-in. I think that was I don't know if she's a traditional person, because Neko Case kind of has her own like thing going on. So I think that they travel, like, because they have to have a female voice to do some of these songs.
Yeah.
Correct.
So she's more of a traveling musician, I think, than as opposed to a member of the band, I think.
Well, no, she is a member of the band, but when she can't tour with them, Catherine Calder's now like a member of the band also, so that's probably who we saw. So they're both. Well,
yeah, we saw Catherine Calder singing. I definitely, I definitely remember that. So, and her voice is different than Neko Case's, but like it's similar enough that at times, if you close your eyes, right, like it's not quite plug and play, but it's also not completely different, where it changes the whole timbre of the song, right? And but I do like those songs better historically, and on this track my favorite songs were the female fronted songs, and I just think there's the energies, I connect more with it for whatever reason on those track songs. So I would say this is a thumbs up for me, but and the pluses are, I think, the fact that all of the individual parts of the songs are really interesting, and I do appreciate the fact that they take different angles to. In some ways, their music is very straight, like traditional in terms of a straight ahead melody and structure, but then they also get to it in kind of a off the beaten path type of way. It was funny when you mentioned Cheap Trick, Josh, a band that we haven't covered really at all on the show.
Right.
We probably would have covered them if we did singles. And I never thought of Cheap Trick in the context of the New Pornographers, but I'm like, actually, there's a lot of Cheap Trick in the New Pornographers, and I never really put that together. But they also were like that, right? That they would do these songs that were very melodic, and you could organize the structure, but they would get to them in very weird ways, whether it be like Surrender or like Hello There, Ladies and Gentlemen, like all these different songs, right? And so they do share a little bit of DNA. And you mentioned, Shoes was a funny one. I was like, wow, that, and there's a little bit of that too. I think I described that as having like frantic energy as well, and almost like a there's almost like a little bit of a theater kid energy to this type of music, or the New Pornographers as well. That it's performative, and when I say that, by the way, it's not a negative thing, but there is a theatrical nature to like the type of music they make too. So thumbs up for me. But yeah, with that takeaway of the fact that I do think I prefer this group as individual singles as opposed to like full albums in some ways, and I can't quite place exactly why.
Jeez, John, get out of my head. Holy crap.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I first heard of the New Pornographers. I think the first album I got of theirs was Electric Version. And I remember reading about them.
That's the album.
Yeah. That's their second that came out after this. And I remember reading about them, and everything I was reading made me go, oh my God, I'm going to love this band, right? Like, this is totally like this power pop, really hooky, catchy, just great stuff, lots of different instruments and whatnot. And I got it. And I was kind of like, ooh, like, this isn't what I was expecting. I liked some of the songs on it, fine, but I didn't like it nearly as much as I thought that I was going to. But I liked it fine enough, right? And I saw them a couple times, and I got this album later on. Actually, I think I might have bought this album at the show that we were at in Orlando. And so I didn't really know it, but I got that album, and I remember my reaction being, I liked this album better than Electric Version. And I think first and foremost, I agree. I think to me, there's three. I would add another song onto the ones that you said, John, but there's three very standout tracks for me, and that's certainly Mass Romantic. The opening track of that is fantastic. Like, the first time I heard that, I was just like immediately captivated. And Neko Case's voice comes and singing the chorus, singing the verses, and then when AC Newman comes in and does the harmony on that, I was like, that's perfection. Like, they nailed it. Like, right off the first, 30 seconds is like one of the best opening tracks I can think of, and so that's a great song. Letter from an Occupant was a song that was put on a mix for me by a friend. So that might have been I might have known that song prior to Electric Version, and that is such an interesting song to me because that's just Neko Case sounds great on it. The chorus, the way that what she does with her voice, the way that the notes fall, it's unexpected, right? They throwing curveballs at you, and it sounds fantastic. And the bridge of that song is really good too. That's another great. My brother and I always talk about like what really makes a power pop song, or just any song in general, but particularly a power pop song, really stand out, is if it has a killer bridge, and that song has a killer bridge, right? That just is awesome. So that's great. And I would also throw to a little bit of a lesser extent, but still in that same vein, I like the Slow Descent into Alcoholism. I think that's just a super catchy song. It's got that staccato guitar, which doesn't always resonate with me, but there's something about the way that they play that. Mass Romantic's a little bit of that too, the staccato guitar, which I think is awesome. So those songs to me really stand out as being like the best aspects of this album. The rest of them, with the exception of one, I think there's one song on here that I've never liked, and that's Mystery Hours. That song I find very annoying. Like, there's not the falsetto part of their vocals. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't really find that as an enjoyable song. I find the rest of the album interesting. Because it's almost like a prog. There's a lot of stuff happening in here, right? And it's not just with the instruments.
Yeah.
And as you said, there are a lot of instruments, and it's a lot of interesting. It's like some of the instruments they're playing with, it's almost like it's like a child's toy, right? Like these, like I know there's a Wurlitzer in there, but I'm thinking about this plastic horn thing that looks like a, like the recorder or whatever, but it's got like a fuzzed out sound and stuff. And so they play around with a lot of that stuff, which I agree with you, John, can get a little wearying at times, or you said you didn't want to use that word, but like, yeah, it can be a little bit overpowering and a little bit much. So there is that, and certainly there's a lot of like keyboards, and sometimes I question the choice of the setting on the keyboard. But there's also different parts of the song, like they're throwing in different things. Like Execution Day is a really good example of that. It's like you got the first part, you think you know what's going on, and then they come in with a totally different song.
Yeah,
and actually that's a song where like the first part I'm like, I don't know how I feel about it. It's okay, and then they do the second part. I'm like, now that part's great. Like I really like the second part of Execution Day. Songs like The Body Says No has a couple of different parts in it. The Two Wild Homes. And so there's times where I'm like, yeah, I'm really feeling this. And other times I'm like, I don't know about that. And I've listened to this album plenty of times, and it's really hard for me to put my thumb on something, right? Or to really hang my hat on something where I'm like, I know exactly what's going on here. And so maybe they're a little inconsistent. And it's a little frustrating because this is a band that I feel like I really should love, but I've never gotten to the point where Josh gets with this band, where it's just like, all the pieces fall together, because I think a lot of elements here are certainly there. And I would say my recollection is that this is, of the 4 albums that I know, and I know pretty much their first 4 pretty well. I think that my recollection is that this is their most consistent. And it's got 3 of my top favorite New Pornographers songs. And I totally see what you're saying, John, because as it being a singles band, because when these guys hit, they hit as well as anybody does, right? But I feel like there's times where they're kind of in the middle, like of hitting and not hitting, and I'm kind of like trying to figure out what's going on. I think that happens more than when they actually hit. So I'm still thumbs up on it. Kind of really listening to this more intently this week and becoming more familiar with it. I still think a lot of songs are pretty solid, but it is a lot, and I'm glad it's only 40 minutes long, because I think I would get a little more tired of it if I listened to this for an extended period of time. But there's certainly enough things peppered in pretty much every song, again, with the exception probably of Mystery Hours, that I think has validity and stuff that I do enjoy. I will say I'm not a huge fan of Dan Behar's voice. So on a song like Jackie, where he's kind of like front and center with the vocals, it's not my favorite. I have listened to some Destroyer stuff before I could really parse away like who Carl Newman was in the New versus Dan Behar. And then when I got the Destroyer album, I was like, oh God, this guy's voice there's something about it. This is usually, I'm okay with most vocal stylings. His is a difficult one for me. There's just something about it. It's a little nails on chalkboard for me. So I like it when he's a little bit set back, as opposed to kind of out front, like on a song like Jackie. But so yeah, there's some mixed things happening here. It is like when you were talking, John, I was like, yep, I agree with pretty much everything that you're saying. So I'm still thumbs up. I still think that the highs are very, very, very high. But there's a little bit of frustration that I do have with them, because I feel like the combination could be there for me to really love this band, and I don't think I ever quite got there. But yeah, Josh, tell us why you love the New Pornographers.
Yeah, I think ultimately they just for me, like, fulfill that promise of like pop music done in an interesting way, and kind of the power pop mode, and the fact that they have, I think Nico Case is kind of a singular voice, and like she elevates the songs, like you said, and her in the mix always kind of like makes things interesting and elevates things. And I think the band as a whole, kind of like I think John said too, they kind of get to songs in interesting ways, and ultimately I always find myself singing along. And when they hit, like you said, Matt, with the 3 tracks that you guys mentioned, those are by far the 3 best songs on this album. There's no question. Those are the songs that I would, give to somebody on a mix or to introduce them. And I think as far as this album goes, I think this just, for me, shows the promise of what's to come. Like, as a debut album, I think I'm fine with it being inconsistent. I would agree with you. I think I do like some of the other songs, but that's just because I've heard them a lot. And I think ultimately by the time it gets to the chorus, I just find myself singing along to them. So while they might not be as strong as songs, there is something about them that draws me in, and I end up singing along to. Later albums of theirs are more consistent. I think Twin Cinema is generally considered their best album. I think that's their 3rd album. That's more consistent. I like Challengers a lot. That's the album after that. I also like Brill Bruisers a lot. And but I think for me, there's stuff on every album that I like. And I think I was introduced to the band on Twin Cinema. I think that was the first album I heard, and then I went back to the other 2. But yeah, I think ultimately, like, Slow Descent into Alcoholism and Letter from an Occupant are kind of like some of my favorite songs of all time. Like, they're just on that level of songs I can listen to over and over again, and I never get bored of them. So for that being on 2 songs, and Mass Romantic's probably like, 3A on that too, but I don't know, I just have always responded to them. And the other thing I like about the band too is like the multiple harmonies. That's like
they're good at that.
That is another strong characteristic of them. And I would agree with you, John. I think it is better when the women are singing lead, but when they do multiple harmonies too, that's always a strong thing for me. So, in reference to kind of their influences, just like the Beach Boys and other things, when we've got multiple artists who can sing, that adds a lot to the stew. So this is a thumbs up for me. It's not their strongest record, but I think it's a strong debut. And ultimately, if you like those 3 tracks, or if you find stuff interesting, like it seems like both of you guys do, then I think there's better stuff to come ultimately. So.
They're going on tour, Josh.
I know.
I think you have to go to Seattle to see them.
Yeah, either Seattle or Portland. I've already looked. I hope they add some dates, but I think I could probably make that trip. So
yeah, John, you can see them in the city.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I saw that they were touring when I was on Spotify. Yeah. I saw they were playing some shows.
And their opener of the tour is here in Boston, so maybe I could see them April 22nd. I got to see some shows, fellas. I haven't seen shows in forever. I need to make a concerted effort to go see some shows.
Yeah, Emily and I saw Nico Case last month for her new album, and it was really good.
Yeah, she loves it. Is it Nico or is it Neko? What do you say, Josh?
It's Nico.
It is Nico?
Yeah, that's what she says. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there you go. I just always thought it might have.
That's what I
tribute.
Yeah, I always
tribute
said
to Nico
too,
from the Velvet Underground.
Yeah. I've heard of both.
Yeah. We'll clean.
But yeah, it does say. But yeah, Wikipedia Nico NEE-KOH, phonetic pronunciation Nico. So Nico. Yep.
There we go. Well, we apologize, Nico Case, for mispronouncing your name all these years. So we're going to cover her and the new Pornographers both separately down the road. So we'll have plenty. And like I said, I will keep open my opinions right as we move through. So. Is it your turn now?
Nope,
Matt,
it's you.